We don't hit home runs on this pod. We work station to station. I am back with my battery mate, as always, Dustin. We are going to continue our preview of the 2024 season and roster construction. Dustin, last week we finished off with the infield, and why don't we jump into the outfield? I don't think we have to really discuss it. It seems to be pretty set, but where do we stand with our three outfielders?
Yeah, like you said, it's pretty set, at least for now. We'll see how injuries and whatnot play out over the early part of the season, but we're going to have Kevin Kiermaier in center, Dalton Varsho in left, and George Springer in right. Seems like a pretty defense-heavy outfield. I think I'm happy about it overall. When it comes to the offense from the outfielders, I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot of discussion to be had about defense, to be honest. They're going to just really hold it down from that perspective. But on the offense, I think I mentioned in the infield show that we have 3 or 4 guys that are going to be keys to this offense, in my opinion. The 2 that I mentioned are Vladimir Guerrero and Kirk. I think 2 more come out of the outfield here, and that is George Springer and Dalton Varsho. George Springer, I think when we talked about the buy-sell hold, we talked about his possibility. We didn't know. I think we both held him. Is that right? Did you hold him?
I bought George Springer.
Oh, you bought him. Okay. Well, either way, I think that he's going to be a key. He had a pretty disappointing year last year, and then he's 1 year older. He's kind of on the wrong side of 35. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can kind of have a bounce back here late in his career. If anybody can do it, someone of his caliber can. And then Dalton Varsho has high expectations, mostly because of the trade that happened. And he's looked pretty strong this spring. And I think a lot of the scuttlebutt around spring that I've been hearing is that he's just looking good, and he's a lot of people's picks to have a breakout this year. As these 2, as well as the other 2, Vladdy and Kirk, go, I think this offense will go.
I think Springer needs to be up there with Bo and Vladdy in terms of these are the straws that stir the drink. In terms of Varsho, I think I held him. I definitely didn't sell, but I think pretty much if we get anything better than we got last year, I think we are doing well. He's going to obviously bring his defensive chops, and anything we get at the offensive end of things is just a bonus. I have heard the same as you. He's chasing less pitches, and really the team in general is chasing less pitches. But I do think the key, I guess, in terms of offense is definitely Springer, highest paid player on the team, highest paid player in franchise history. So he really has to deliver better than what he did last year. And well, we're going to see if that is the case. But my understanding is of the 2 players that were at the complex the most this offseason, getting ready, working out, hitting, George Springer was one of them. And so I think he's definitely committed to being better this year. Whether he actually will be, another story. But I did buy George Springer, so I'm fingers crossed that he does bounce back.
Another aspect here, to jump back to Dalton Varsho, is the base paths. He's a speedster, and he can do a lot of damage. He's been doing a lot of stealing bases in spring here, a lot more than we saw him last year. So I think that's just another aspect of his game. If he can do that, do his usual high quality defensive acrobatics out there, and put together a decently good offensive year, man, he's going to be a really valuable piece for this team.
Well, with Springer, Kiermaier, and Varsho, that rounds out our 13 position players. So we're going to move over to the pitching part of the team now, where there will be 13 pitchers. Dustin, and a couple weeks ago, there seemed to be quite some uncertainty, which after yesterday, the last spring training game, we have some clarity on what's going on in terms of the pitching, and it's not quite the crisis that we thought it may be. earlier in March.
Yeah, we saw Kevin Gosman and Alec Manoah both go down with what, cranky shoulders,
Shoulder fatigue.
right? Whatever you want to call it. They didn't quite bounce back from well, for Alec Manoah from his first start, and for Kevin Gosman, his, I guess, side session or whatever he was doing at the time that sort of tweaked his shoulder. Um, it seems like for Alec Manoah, he hasn't really bounced back, or he's taken quite a while to come along. But to the collective sigh of every Blue Jays fan out there, Kevin Gosman has seemed to bounce back and come along fast enough to possibly not even miss a start. I mean, I guess technically he would have been the opening day starter, but we're now going to see Jose Barrios take that on. But it looks like Kevin might make the start in Houston in the fifth spot, um, with maybe not as long of an outing that we might see in mid-season form, but he may go 60, 70 pitches and then bring in like a Mitch White or another kind of long reliever, Trevor Richards, or just have a bullpen day that day. So I think that's great news for the starting pitching. And, we'll see, I guess, what that means for his ramp up towards, having a much more deep outings. It might take him a little while to get to where he would have been had he had a quote unquote normal spring. But I think having Kevin Gosman in the rotation at all is going to be much better than having a Mitch White, Trevor Richards piggyback bullpen day.
Yeah, and his last outing in the spring, 3 innings pitched, 1 run, 3 hits, 0 walks, and 7 strikeouts. So he definitely looks sharp in his 3 innings this past Monday. So Arden Zwelling was on the JD Bunkus show earlier today, and it seems to be a toss up of whether he goes against Houston, against, as you said, or if he feels good, they might actually run him out against Tampa and kind of keep him away from Houston, given how good Houston is. So we'll see what shakes down. But the rest of this rotation, Jose Barrios is our, of course, opening day starter. They have not posted anything as of yet in terms of the rest of the games of the Tampa series, but Chris Bassett, Yusei Kikuchi, and the fifth starter, or I guess fourth starter, because of Gosman's injury, would be Bowden Francis.
Yeah, he's looked pretty good right from the beginning of spring. I think we talked a little bit about him and Alec Manoah having a little bit of a competition for the final spot. I mean, I guess it wasn't much of a competition with Alec being injured, but Bowden really showed what he's got, and I don't think that we're going to be too upset to see him pitch. He looks pretty good. He had a pretty good year last year out of the pen. Um, I'm really happy for him that he gets a chance to really show what he's got, and hopefully give Alec Manoah some motivation to try and come back to his form, because it's a good problem to have if you've got this many major league ready starters. The depth is probably maybe not where you'd want it necessarily on the starting pitching side, but I mean, no real major league team has 5 high quality starters anyway, so let alone 6 reasonable ones. So I think it's improved depth from over last year. Last year we were kind of crossing our fingers and hoping nobody went down. We got lucky that nobody did, and Hyunjin Ryu came in and saved the day towards the end of the season. So it's good to have this depth, and I'm happy to see Bowden make team.
Well, we definitely talked about that Alec Manoah, Bowden Francis battle for the fifth starter position, but you did mention that sometimes things kind of work themselves out, and it definitely did here. Of course, we'd prefer Alec Manoah to be healthy and pitching, but he is working his way back, and I think the question with Manoah is going to be when he is ready. And Arden's Welling on that same JD Bunkus show earlier today essentially said he'll be probably ready for May. He's thinking on based on the timeline about him kind of working up to what he needs to be. And the question is going to be at that point, how is Bowden Francis pitching? And if he's pitching good and Alek Manoah looks like he can come up, where, what's going to happen?
Again, these things do work themselves out to a certain degree. I mean, I don't want to jinx anything, but who knows if Yusei Kikuchi has some struggles and Alek Manoah looks great in May, as you said, or even in early June, and there's an option to put Yusei on the IL or something, or some injury happens. Who knows what happens? But these kinds of things happen fairly regularly on a normal season. Last year is probably an exception. The fact that we had, I think only 8 starters the whole way, and one of those was like a kid who came in and threw the last game of the season. So, we're gonna need these backup starters, whether it be Alek Manoah when he's ready, or Yariel Rodriguez if he ever looks ready, or any of these sort of Buffalo pitchers that are kind of on the fringes, and ready to hopefully spell for short terms. But like I said, it'll work itself out, and you kind of play the hot hand.
All right, the other, I guess, name in this starting pitching equation, well, there's actually two names. You did touch on one of them, Yariel Rodriguez. He will apparently start in AAA, continue to bring his workload up, and I guess we'll see where he kind of features, or if we need to call on him. The other is Paulo Espina, who I don't expect to see, but he, if a situation where maybe Kevin Gosman feeling a bit sore this morning after yesterday, I feel like that would probably be someone they might look to. But he's kind of the depth to the depth.
Yeah, he's the 7th, 8th guy out there. I think if Kevin Gosman wakes up with a problem in his shoulder this morning, or he doesn't feel like he can go on that 4th or 5th day, my gut is that they throw Mitch White out there for 3 or 4 innings. They piggyback Trevor Richards after him, and bullpen the rest of the way. That'll be tough on the bullpen, and hopefully we don't have to do that, but that's my highly educated guess for that.
So speaking of that bullpen, so we have a number of names that we know will be featured. We have a couple injuries, and then we have a couple, I guess, pitchers looking to step in. Dustin, I'm just going to go through who looks to be, I guess, written in permanent ink. So we have Chad Green, Yanis Cabrera, Yimi Garcia, Trevor Richards, Tim Meza, and of course, our aforementioned penny stock, Mitch White. Any of these pitchers look like maybe they could be the closer while Romano is out injured?
My estimation would be that it's going to be Yimi Garcia, just based on what I know John Schneider and how they've used him in the past. It seems to be he's going to be the guy. I mean, it might be a committee to a certain degree, but if I had to throw out a guy to save a 1-run game, it would be Yimi Garcia, and maybe like Tim Meza if it's a lefty or something like that. But that's what I'd do. I think we're just kind of crossing our fingers and hoping that Jordan Romano comes back quick, because early in the season starters aren't going to be going super deep, and if you don't have your 2 top line bullpen arms ready to go, it's going to be rough out there. I think they're going to be hoping that the offense starts the season on fire to win some games here.
In terms of the closer position, who's going to step in, I'm going to go with Chad Green. So that'll be my pick for that. As I kind of touched on briefly, there are 2 injuries to 2 Toronto bullpen fixtures, one of which is to Jordan Romano. He has a elbow injury, and then Eric Swanson out with a shoulder injury. And I would agree 100%, Dustin, that these are probably the 2 top bullpen arms. Saying that, I think at the end of the 2024 season, I think Chad Green is probably gonna be in that conversation, or at least I'm hoping so. But I'll go with Chad Green as being the person that they look to. I think he's got a pedigree in terms of when he was on the Yankees, good in high leverage. And I think his splits, lefty to righty, are pretty good. But again, we need Jordan Romano and Eric Swanson back. I don't know if I want them to rush back, but I definitely want them back in the bullpen because those are two guys you can pretty much throw it against anybody, lefty, righty, pretty much whoever, and they will be missed to start the year.
I see what you're saying on Chad Green. I do see his potential. I just don't know how much they trust him right now from the team perspective. And I did hear some talk about them trying to add a pitch to him, whether it was a curveball or they tried to give him another pitch and it didn't really work out well. So maybe his spring results were not great because he was trying something new out, and he'll kind of turn it around and be the guy that he's been, like you said, for the Yankees and others. So I can see where he comes along and becomes a trusted arm down there, in the seventh, eighth inning.
All right, Dustin, with the five starters and six relievers that we have written in permanent ink on the roster, that actually leaves us two spots in the bullpen. And essentially, they're going to be filling in for Romano and Swanson. And do we have any indication who will be kind of who they'll look to?
I don't know if we have any indication. Looking at the names that are on the 40 man, Zach Pop comes to mind. Perhaps, obviously, Nate Pearson is going to be in that conversation. And maybe like a Wes Parsons. I think those are the three that are going to be kind of vying for those last two spots. My gut is they're going to give Nate there. He's the one that I'm more confident that he's going to make it. Zach Pop's been really rough lately, but I don't know a whole lot about Wes Parsons to say whether or not he's a better choice. Kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other on these guys. I'm sure the team's got more information than we do on which one of these to bring along.
Well, those are the two names that I had seen and talked about. It is tough to know. So in spring training, they don't actually have a roster. So basically, unless if you don't see a guy, like the reporters will ask what's happening with him because they don't actually have to tell you that they're injured or whatever. But it appears that Nasty Nate Pearson is likely going to be one along with Zach Pop. Guess we'll see in terms of how that works. If Zach Pop maybe gets lit up, they might look to somebody else. But seems to be those two names seem to be like the most popular.
Yeah, and something that I think on that same podcast with JD Bunkus, that they were talking about Yariel Rodriguez a little bit, how the team seems to kind of want to bring him up a little slowly. He's been out of, live games for about a year. I think the last kind of real competition he's played in was the WBC last year. So they're likely to want to bring him up fairly slowly, but from a stuff perspective and from, a pure talent and somebody that if he was going at his peak or at his, at least some high percentage of his peak, he'd probably be a lot better option over, Nate and definitely over Zach Pop. He's maybe kind of one of those options, like if the team's looking to, compete this year and, maybe you want to bring him along and see what he's got. Maybe a risky thing, but that could be something they're thinking or at least considering.
All right, let's move on to some 2024 season predictions. So, Dustin, let's first talk about the number of wins you think that the Jays are going to have. So, I'll let you go first.
I give this a little bit of thought. Last year, I think we picked somewhere in the low, I picked anyways, somewhere in the low 90s, 94, 95, something like that. Ended up at 89. I would say that that team underperformed, but it's not necessarily better this year than last. So I'm gonna say they're gonna overperform. I'm gonna make a 94 win prediction this year.
Ooh, nice.
That's might not be enough to win the division. I think it's going to be a tough one, but I think it's going to be wild card at home. So they're going to have the first wild card spot.
I kind of struggled with this one a little bit. You know, last year, so much expectations. Obviously, you said the underperformance that we all saw, and then they ended up with 89 wins. I think the hitting's going to be better this year. I think the pitching road is going to be a bit more rocky, but I think we have some depth there. So I'm gonna go a safe 90 wins. Like I like they'll have one more win than last year. I don't know. I do like bolder predictions, and as you remember, I was quite bold last year with how I
Yes.
thought the team would do. We'll not discuss that, but I'm gonna go 90 wins.
All right. Fair enough.
All right, so why don't we extend this a little bit? Like, how do you think? So we have the number of wins. Okay, how do you think the Jays are gonna do? Does your 94 wins where does it, I guess, leave them, and are they going to do any damage in the playoffs?
I think they're going to end up with, like I said, the first wild card spot. That means home game, wild card series. I think they're going to get past that. I mean, they have to. They can't be another one and out. I think they have the horses, and if they get hot at the right time, I think they're going to end up in the championship series. So I'm calling an ALCS appearance and a loss in the ALCS.
All right, I'm liking that. I think this team seems to be have the makeup of getting in the playoffs and doing some damage, although I think we all said that last year too. I'm going to say they are going to finish in the second wild card. They will win that and go to the ALCS. So I'm going to go with I'm going to line up my prediction with yours. I think this is ALCS team, but they do not have the horses to get over the hump and get to the World Series.
Yeah, I think that's a safe prediction for us. I mean, obviously, we're going to be hoping for winning it all. I think some of the additions, specifically Justin Turner, they made this year, there's some experience there. I don't know how much that necessarily counts in baseball, but I think it's something, and I think there's a little more hunger this year. And like Bobichette was saying, that they feel like they got to prove people wrong.
All right, we're going to play a little game with Vladimir Guerrero, and then we are going to get into Dustin's 2024 bold prediction. So, Dustin, over under for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in the 2024 season, over under 33.5 home runs.
I have to take the over here. I think he's looking good. He's hitting the ball in the air. I'm just looking at a lot of the outs that he had in spring here have been in the air, fly balls. I don't remember seeing a whole lot of double play, ground balls. There's a few, but I think he's unlocked something, and as long as he's healthy and doesn't try and play through an injury or something like that, I think he'll beat 35. I think 35 is I think he's gonna be over 40. But
Just to clarify, so over under of 33.5, so you think he's going to be definitely over 33.5.
definitely,
I'm going to go over as well. I think he's going to reach mid 30s, and yeah, I think he'll have a successful season. I don't know if he's going to have a 2021 season, but I think he'll have 35, 36 home runs by the end of it.
yeah, I think 33 and a half is a low bar. I mean, I guess he's set that from his last few years, but
So on that same JD Bunkus show, he set his over under, and this is actually, I should give credit. This is I heard this and thought it was a good discussion point. He had his at 36.5 and everybody went under. So I thought that was a little high. So that's why I moved it to 33 and a half. I think it's 33 and a half, I think, is a bit more, maybe 34 and a half. I don't know. I think there's a bit more discussion there when you start to get to low 30s.
I mean, it's in the ballpark. I think he's going to be mid 30s for sure.
All right, so now it's time for Dustin's bold prediction.
Yeah, I know we don't do these a lot on our pod, but I was just thinking a little bit about IKF. You know, a lot of there's a lot of mythos about out there about the Yankees, right? That, like, putting on those pinstripes just kind of gets guys' blood flowing and their juices running, and they reach their ultimate potential when they get in the Yankees uniform. I think that IKF, there's going to be like a reverse of that. He was on the Yankees. I think their fan base kind of honestly sort of didn't like him a whole lot, or just beat him up a little bit because that's the way the Yankees are. I think if he gets on this team and he gets regular playing time, which I think they're going to play him fairly regularly at third base, I think he's going to have over 2 WAR. So that's my bold prediction for IKF. He's never had more than 1.1 WAR a season in his career yet. So I think over 2 WAR for IKF. If he plays regularly, he's going to get a lot of that from defense, but that's my bold prediction.
I like it. I like it a lot.
And to add on to that, I think the fan base is going to appreciate him a lot more than the Yankees did.
I think Giancarlo Stanton would disagree with your assessment of the Yankees pinstripes raising people's games, because I think he's not been good for them. IKF seems like the small fish in the big pond. Like, that's kind of the New York, and I think maybe coming to a little bit of a smaller pond here in Toronto will benefit him. Yeah, I don't know what to make of him. I think this is something that I think we can discuss on a state of the season episode this year, because I think he's going to be interesting to track. As we kind of touched on before, he did have, while Aaron Judge was out, like, he did have some good offensive numbers, but we're talking about, I think, maybe 2 months, maybe a little bit more. He has not had a sustained full major league season of being good offensively. We know he's got the defensive chops, but I think this is perfectly reasonable 2 WAR season for Mr. IKF.
I hope it works out. We need some strong performances from unexpected places.
I think we're gonna see IKF patrolling the outfield a bunch too. When Kiermaier's getting days off. I have a bit of a nervous anticipation and optimism for this season. I think if they get through that first 3 weeks and they're looking okay, I think we're gonna have a good season. 90 wins, as I said.
It is going to be a tough first stretch here. Tampa, then Houston, New York, and Seattle. On the road through all of that, it'll be a test early going. And yeah, if they can come out strong through that, it's going to be a real good table setter for the season.
All right, Dustin, I think that is all the time we have. We will be back this weekend. We'll talk about the Tampa Bay series. How about that? And talk about some actual baseball instead of just what could be.
I can't wait.
Thanks, Dustin, for joining me.